guest bedroom for a few episodes now. I just thought today we'd move away from that room and I'd just do a few other little bits and pieces around the house. And I want to start in the living room, and I want to make a little wicker tray for the coffee table. Okay, so in this box I keep all of my cord, ribbon, braid, cane. I've actually got some really nice little kits in there. This lovely little teddy bear kit from Josephine Parnell. I think I started making it and then gave up just because it was so tiny, and I just couldn't do the tiny stitches then. I might go back to that, might have another go. Yeah, so you know, little Christmas bits, beads, everything like that. It really does need a sort out, to be honest. But what I'm looking for is this cord. This may be a little bit thin. I think this is the 0.75mm, so just under a millimetre thick. Let me see if I've got a slightly thicker one. This, I really love this one for baskets. This is the waxed cord. This is about a millimetre thick or just over. And I think that's going to be a little bit too thick for the tray. So I may actually have to use that 0.75. I'm thinking there's something in between, but there can't be, can there, I suppose. I really need to sort this out. I'm quite ashamed actually how untied it is. But I'm sure everybody has a box where you just sort of put bits, some buckles there, that haven't really got another definite home. That's the... Well, actually, that's quite nice. That was what I used to use for my crocheted blankets, a slightly thicker cotton, but I could actually use that as a thin wool, because I'm not actually getting on very well knitting with the crewel wool, because I find it's a little bit too, sort of too hairy, do you know what I mean? So the needles keep going actually inside the wool. So that would actually work. Wrong colour, but that might be worth looking for, something like that. What else have we got in here? Yeah, that's the other roll there. That is actually the same thickness, so I'll use that one. And I just wanted to use a slightly thinner cord just because I want to make a smaller tray. The thicker one's really good for the baskets when you're making a slightly larger basket, because obviously it doesn't take as long to wrap round. But with this tray, it's going to be fairly small, and I'll talk about the size in a moment. I've also got in here these fabulous little glass beads, which I now use for stuffing, thanks to a recommendation from one of my little bitsers. But what I'd actually bought before that, having seen sort of other people using them, were these larger ones. And they, as is always the case, they look so much smaller in the photo. But look at the size of them. They're probably about 2.53mm, so 1/8 of an inch in diameter. So far too large for miniature work, but I suppose I could find another project to use those for. I do want to make another full-sized ragdoll, so I don't know, maybe could use those. Yeah, so I'm just going to take those two out for now, but I really do need to sort this box out. But do you know what? I really don't know what to do with all of these bits. So tell me in the comments below, how do you store all of your braids and ribbons and, you know, bits? I suppose I could get one of those trays with the sections in, but then I need probably something larger for all of the cord and things. I don't like things being this messy. And I know you're all going to say, oh, that's not messy, but I do like things to be neat. And then obviously I could have come to this box and just found what I wanted a lot more quickly. So I'll pack all this away for now, but I really do need to sort that, so that will go on my list of things to do, which is probably about a mile long by now. Right, and put that on the list as well, order some more of that for knitting. So for the round base and the side of my tray, I'm going to be using this watercolour paper. And this is a 300 GSM, so fairly thick. If I sort of bend that there, you can see that's got a nice thickness to it. So obviously a lot thicker than your printer paper, which would be around 80 to 100 GSM, but not too thick so that you can't sort of bend it, because I want to bend the side of the tray, obviously around my base. And this has got a texture to it. It's got a smoother side and then this nice sort of woven side. So this is really useful for lots of projects. And I've used it for making a suitcase. I made the suitcase from wood, but then I used this to cover it and aged it all up, and that came out really well. But lots of other projects as well you can use this for. And I thought I'd use card today because just some of the comments on my last video were perhaps trying to use other materials for making things with. Now, I must admit I'm not a huge fan of using anything other than wood for doll's house furniture. I like that it feels more solid and will last a lot longer, but I do actually like using other materials for smaller projects if it's easier and quicker to do so. So if you wanted to, you could use wood for the base of this, and I'm just going to be cutting a circle, probably 2 or 3 circles from this for the base, just to give it a bit of thickness, but you could cut that from a piece of wood, and even balsa wood for what we're going to be doing today. So I said I'd talk about sizing, so I'm going to do my tray 30mm in diameter. So if I just pick you up and show you that size on my very useful cutting mat that has these little diameters here as well, that's that big. So if I put my thumb there, you can see it's not that large. Now, one mistake I used to make when I started making 12th scale miniatures was to make my own mind up that something looked too small. And then I would say, well, I'll make it slightly larger. But I remember I learned the lesson when I actually copied our wooden roll-top bread bin to do a project for my miniatures book. And just looking at it, I thought it should be so much larger, and I made it larger, and it just looked completely out of scale when I put it into my doll's house kitchen. So I really learnt my lesson there, and even though you think something doesn't look big enough and it's not going to make much of an impact, always stick to the 12th scale sizing. If you're a stickler for working in, true to scale, which I actually am now. I've learned that lesson, because I think if anything is just slightly too large, when you put it in a room with your other 12th scale pieces, it is definitely going to look out of scale, and it's going to ruin the effect that you want. So if you have a think about it, 30 across like that is going to be 14 inches. So if I show you again, just using my cutting mat, and I'm doing this because this is something I do quite regularly. I use my cutting mat because obviously you've got the sizes here in front of you. So the cutting mat, if I put my hands like that, is 2 foot across, or 60 centimetres across. So obviously you wouldn't want to do a tray that was 2 inches wide, although on your rule that doesn't look that big. So halfway here to the 30, that's a foot. So then an extra couple of inches going up there like that, that is the 14 inches. And that's about the right size for a tray. I realise my left hand's sort of off camera there. But if you imagine you've got a tray with handles on, have a think of it like that. So if you've got something like that you can measure it out against, then use that, because it really does help when you're sizing your miniatures. Okay, but let's get started, and I'm going to begin by drawing my circles onto my card. I'm going to use my compass to do that. Okay, so I've set my compass here to 14mm, so the circle will be 28mm, and I'm taking off the 2mm to allow for the card that I'm using around the edge of the tray, and then obviously the cord that I'm going to be covering it in. So always have a think about that as well, because if you just make the base to the size that you want it, then your sides are going to make it larger as well. And as I said, I'll probably do 3 or even 4 circles to stick together, just to make a thicker base, and that way you've got more then to stick your side against. It's going to be a little bit more sturdy. Okay, so cut those out. Okay, so I'm going to glue these together. And I just actually pressed them together and measured, and the 4 of them make a depth of 2 millimeters, or a thickness of 2 millimeters. So each sheet is 0.5 millimeters thick. And I've got my clamps here, ready to clamp them together once the glue dries. And then we can make a start on the actual side of the tray. So make sure they're lined up, and then pop the clamps on. And that piece can be put to one side to dry. Okay, so what I've done here is cut a strip measuring 7 millimeters high, or 5/16 of an inch, and in real life that would make a nice deep tray of about 3 inches tall. And I've cut this a lot longer than I need it, so I've probably added on about 12 millimeters or ½ an inch at each end, more than I need to fit around my base. And then, as you can see, I've just stuck down each end using my masking tape. And I'm actually now going to apply glue and then glue some strips of my cord onto the card like that. So just apply a bit of glue. And then you don't really need to keep your ends straight on this, because at the end we can just trim it off. So just lay it on, make sure you're getting it right along that top edge, and we'll make a little plait to go around the very top once we've finished the tray. And I think what I'm actually going to do, so I don't get my fingers covered in glue, is just grab another cocktail stick that I can press that into place with. And with things like this, it's always more difficult to get started, and then once you've got the first strip or 2 on, you'll be able to go quite quickly. So lay it on there like that, snip that off, and then you can do your next piece. And I think I actually just wiped off quite a bit of the glue with my finger, so I'm going to apply a little bit more, like that, and then attach my next piece of cord. Getting it as close to that first one as you can. You don't want to see any of the white card showing through. And then work your way down. And you'll find that as the first pieces start to dry into place, you can push the lower pieces up against them without sort of knocking them off the edge there. But do keep applying more glue if you need to. So I'm just gluing the final strand into place there. Maybe able to get one more on, but if I've got any paper overhanging at the bottom, I can just trim that off. It can be a little bit shorter at the sides, that's fine. And don't worry if you get glue on top of the cord, because that will just dry clear, or you can wipe it off once it's dry. And as I said earlier, once you've got more strands on, that does become easier as you move down, because you can be a little bit rougher with it as the higher strands begin to dry. Okay, so let's trim that off. So I'm going to see if I can just carefully move that to another area of the desk, and that can be left to dry. So by now your base should be dry, and we're actually going to apply cord to this as well, but this time in a spiral. So we'll start in the centre and then work our way around. And again, this is quite tricky to get started, but once you have got a couple of rounds done, then you can actually go quite quickly. But what I'm going to start by doing is securing the base to my work surface, again using masking tape. Okay, so stick that on there like that. Apply a bit of glue. And you'll need to probably reapply this again as you go around. So if you just begin by sort of twisting that around in your fingers just a little bit, even that's quite tricky. I'll just use my cocktail stick to do that. So just start it off really, and then attach that into the centre. You should be able to still see the hole there from your compass to know where the centre is. Actually, I don't think my little sort of pre-curl worked, but use your cocktail stick to help you twist it around. So just sort of keep pressing and twisting until you get going, really, and work your way around. So once you've got a couple of rounds done, you can really get moving. But the glue does dry quite quickly on card, so you may need to keep sort of reapplying it every few sort of twists. Make sure you're keeping it nice and tight, keeping all the rounds close together. Apply a bit more glue. Continue your way round. Okay, so I'm nearly there now. I've probably got a couple of more rounds to do, but I must admit, as I got closer to the outside edge, I found it easier to actually remove the disc from the tape and actually just sort of twist it around in my hands. But as you can see, I am getting quite gluey, but you find that the glue starts sticking to the cord, the glue on your fingers. You'll have those sort of little flaky bits all around your tray, which don't look very nice. Okay, so whilst I'm finishing off these final 2 rounds, perhaps now you might like to go and hit the like button if you're enjoying the video. If you could hit the notification bell as well, if you haven't done so already, that would really be appreciated, as then you'll get notified every time I upload a new video. And also please check that you are actually subscribed to the channel if you do enjoy my content. And all of those things, as well as commenting down below, really do help other people to find me. So that would all be very much appreciated. And if you don't know what to comment about, perhaps you could just tell me what you love about miniaturing. What's your favourite thing? How many dolls' houses have you got? What scale do you work in? All that sort of thing, which I love to know about people. Okay, so I think I'm pretty much round there. I've got a bit of gap in there, obviously, where I haven't cut it into an exact circle, but I'm not going to be able to get that all the way around. So I'm actually going to snip that off now, about there, a bit more glue on the end, and then just glue that down as close to the actual cord as I can get it. Like that. Again, don't worry about your glue residue on there, because that will either dry clear or you can just pick it off once it's completely dry, which I'll probably do. But I'm going to put that to one side now as well. So whilst that piece is drying, I'm going to make a plait, and I usually use the rule of going around whatever you're adding it to 2.5 times. Here I've cut it 3 times the diameter of my base, because then I'll have enough for a couple of little handles as well. And if you haven't got anyone to hold onto the ends for you there, you could just clip that to your cutting mat with a nice strong bulldog clip, and away you go. Okay, so we've got all our bits ready now, so we can start putting them together. So just begin by snipping the ends from the tray side, and then sort of run it between your fingers like that, just to get it to go around, and then it will glue around the base a bit more easily. So bring in your base, and we're going to apply glue around the outside edge. So then bring in your side. If you've got sort of more white showing at one edge, then glue that to the bottom. And remember, you want your cord on the inside edge. It may actually help to lay it down so you can get the bottom of each piece flush. And we're actually not going to overlap here. We're just going to glue the ends together. So get it round first of all like that, and then you can snip off down the back there. I'm actually going to pick that up to do that. And then join those two ends together. Apply a bit of glue on the end like that. And then push them together. And just press and hold for a moment. So then bring in a narrow piece of masking tape and just tape up your join. Like that. And then if any sort of threads have come off on the inside, you can just glue those down again. So let me just get those straight in there. And then apply a bit more glue. And just glue them back around the edge like that. So now bring in your plait, and I'm going to glue a handle at either side of the tray. So I'm actually going to glue one down that join there. So just apply a bit of glue, and then probably about 6mm or 1/4 of an inch away. Attach the first piece of plait so that the knot is below the tray. We'll trim that off in a moment. And then shape around your handle. You don't want them to be too high. It's probably sort of 3mm over the top of the tray there. And then trim. Because it's so warm in here today, the glue isn't taking as quickly as it normally would, just on paper. And then you want to do that again at the other side, making sure that you are right opposite the first one. And get your handle to the same height as well. That looks about right. Again, snip that off. Leave those to dry for a moment, and then we're going to wrap cord around the outside of the tray. So apply glue around the bottom half of the base, and then bring in your cord again. And again, we're just going to wrap it around. I think I'll just start, where was that join? I'll start over there. Actually in the centre of one of the handles, I think. I don't think it really matters, as long as you sort of end up there as well. So again, this is quite tricky starting, once you've got the first few rounds in place. Again, it becomes easier. So just go around, keeping each piece as close to the one before as possible, and making sure you're starting off right along the bottom edge there. You want to pull fairly tightly, but not too tight so that you distort the shape, especially if you're using this sort of card. And then once you've covered your glue, just apply a little bit more. Continue around until the card is completely covered, and then snip off your cord, and you can actually just glue that down on top of the card, like that. We're then going to glue the remaining piece of plait around on the inside of those handles, so it sits around the inside of the circle there. But I'm just going to let that dry off for a moment longer. Okay, so apply glue around that top edge, going on the inside edge of the handles there. Bit of glue off my finger there. I have washed my hands several times during this project, just to get rid of all those flaky bits. And then just lay the first part of the plait on like that. And then just lay it around that top edge. Making sure that you're not twisting it around as you go, like I think I've done there. Make sure as well you're not pulling too tightly so that you're sort of pulling the plait in as you go around, to keep that nice round edge. Like that, and then when you're back to the beginning, not quite see where I've started there, snip that off and glue it down, blending in with the start. I just need to pop a little bit more glue on, just to the end there. A huge fly just came in. Got the back door open, it's actually quite warm today. Like that. There's our little wicker tray. So let's go and put this into place. To sit on the coffee table there. Now I'm not going to have time to dress it in today's episode, but I can see that set with a couple of mugs of hot chocolate and marshmallows and maybe a nice plate of cookies. I also want to make some books to go on the coffee table and some magazines. But what I want to do now is make a mirror to go above the mantelpiece. To make the mirror, I began by cutting the moulded edge from a piece of skirting board or baseboard. Just be careful of your fingers when you're doing this. I then sanded along the front of the piece and along the edges. Using 0.8mm sheetwood, that's 1/32 of an inch, I cut a piece measuring 85mm by 60mm, that's 3 1/4 inches by 2 3/8 of an inch. And you want to cut this piece for the overall size of the mirror. The frame will sit on the inside of this piece. I've also got here a piece of 1.5mm stripwood, 1/16 of an inch, and I shall use this as a surround to the actual mirror sheet. I then applied a coat of brown mahogany wood dye to each of the pieces and left them to dry. Okay, so all of my pieces are now dry, so I'm beginning to build up my mirror. And then just as a bit of an afterthought, I thought it might look quite nice if I put an extra piece in between the frame there and then what will be the little surround that goes around the mirror. So I've cut some pieces here from 0.8 sheetwood, which I'm going to have on the inside. And I want to score some lines into them, but I don't just want to go straight down because then it won't look very nice at the corners. So I'm going to angle these as well and then have some straight lines and then go out at a slight angle at the side. But I'm going to get them cut first. So what I'll do is I'll glue the frame into place and then I'll know exactly how I need to cut them. And this obviously isn't a definite tutorial because you can build up a mirror using any sort of pattern that you wish, but using this sort of technique. So basically cut your backboard and then just build up your mirror. You can use mouldings and things, or just keep it quite plain and just have a frame around the outside edge. I want something that looks pretty sort of, I suppose heavy is the wrong word, but do you know what I mean? Quite sort of chunky, wooden, to fit with that sort of log cabin style. Put that on there. I used my smaller guillotine to cut those. And basically you just sort of measure the length and then do an angle at each end. So do your little pencil mark to do your length, then cut the angle up to it, opposite ends in each piece, and then work your way around. So once I've got all of the pieces in place, I can then apply some varnish, that's what I'm trying to say, apply some clear varnish, just to get rid of this matte look on these pieces. I also want to put just a little bit on the join as well. I just think this looks really nice with the mitre cuts, you know, with the pattern all lining up like that. But of course you can actually buy this as frame. You don't need to cut apart your skirting or baseboard. You can buy little pieces of frame and it would actually have the groove in the back, you know, to sit around the picture or mirror or whatever you're using it for. I might have to pop a bit of tape on some of these corners just to hold it all together, but I'll get it all in place first. Okay, so I've glued the outer frame into place and then I've cut the pieces for that inner frame that I was talking about. Now, I was going to score grooves into these, but actually I haven't sanded the wood yet and they've got a really nice texture to them. It was a little bit of a rougher piece of wood. It's a beachy, but sometimes you find that you can see the grain in it quite prominently. And I actually quite like that look, and I think I prefer that to actually scoring lines into it, because unless I get them exactly right at these corners, you know, going from straight to angled, I think it might look a little bit messy. So I'm not going to sand this. I'm going to apply the wood dye to the rough wood and actually see how that looks, and then just keep that texture. I can then glue that into place once I've applied the wood dye, and then I'll put my inner frame in like that, and then actually cut my mirror sheet to fit exactly in there. And that way, because I'm not then attaching the mirror sheet right till the end, I can apply my clear varnish. Okay, so I'm going to apply the wood dye then to these pieces really carefully, because it's actually a very fine wood as well. It's probably a little bit less than 0.8 even. So I might just sort of pop those onto a piece of masking tape and apply the wood dye that way, so I'm not handling them too much. Okay, so whilst that wood dye is drying, I just thought I'd say hello, and I just wanted to say again a huge thank you for all your comments and likes, and to everybody that checked their notification bell and actually checked that they were subscribed to the channel. I've had loads of new subscribers since the last video. I think I'm up to something like 50,150 now, and the last video had more views and likes than quite a few of them have had over the last few months. So again, a really huge thank you, and if you could just do that again this time, hit the like button, make sure you've got the notification bell set to all videos, and just subscribe if you're not already subscribed, obviously, if you enjoy the content, and it would really be appreciated. Now I'm going to finish off the mirror in this episode. I had wanted to get a few more bits and pieces done, but again, things have just taken a lot longer than I thought they actually would. One thing I did want to do is make a new bedspread for the bed in the main bedroom in there, but I'll do that in the next episode now, and then we'll return to the guest bedroom in a later episode, as there's sort of loads more bits and pieces I want to make to go in there. Now, I'm filming this Monday, and tomorrow is Matt and Mai's 14th wedding anniversary. I'm not sure what we're doing yet. It's probably going to be weather permitting. So I'm not sure if I'll actually get this on to get it edited tonight and on for tomorrow night, but if not, it will be Wednesday, and I'll just get that on as soon as I've finished editing. So not quite the sort of Friday upload that I want yet. I'm still obviously going to work towards that. That might be a while, but I will try to do it every 10 to 14 days. What else was I going to tell you? Yes, thank you as well to everybody who came over and joined my Patreon channel. Again, really appreciated. And there's loads of great stuff over there. At the moment, I'm working on a 1940s doll's house, which is the series that you'll find over there. There's a tutorial uploaded on the 20th of every month, and they're slightly longer tutorials. I go into everything, you know, step by step, and people that watch a lot of my tutorials do say that every time they watch they learn something new, even if it's not perhaps a piece that they want to make. But there are, I think, 72 furniture pieces over there now, so there's something for, I would imagine, every room of the house. I haven't actually checked that, I'll have to do that, but I'm pretty sure there's something over there for every room of the house, and so much variety as well. And then on the 1st of every month I upload a vlog which I call Tea, Biscuits and Doll's House Chatter, and it's just £1, $1, €1 a month. And I just chat about anything really relating to dolls' houses and miniatures. So it might be a tutorial, it might be me trying something out of one of the many DIY books you can see behind you there, or something else really. Sometimes I just ask you to sit with me whilst I work on something. The last one I dressed a bed for book 6, and then this one, which I've actually just finished editing, I'm going to be making some more detailed miniature pieces, including a stamp album, so I think you'll enjoy that one. But obviously not everybody has that in their budget, so I'm really happy for you just to watch me here on YouTube if that's all you can do. But just to press the like button and make sure you're subscribed really does mean a lot. And since I've sort of published those last couple of videos, I've actually been looking into the algorithm on YouTube, and it just takes so much to keep up with it. Yes, it is the regular uploads, but it's also hitting those numbers, and the likes and the comments make the algorithm realise that it's a popular video, and then they recommend it to other people. But if you drop out of putting a video up regularly, you know, if you go for sort of 2 or 3 weeks without putting one up, then you go back to square one almost, and it can take 6 weeks again to catch up and get back to where you were when you do start uploading more regularly. So it's so difficult to keep the momentum going. So that's why I really appreciate everything you did on that last video, and please let's try and keep that going. And as I say, I'm working now to try and upload a video on every Friday at 8 o'clock. Might be a while, but I'll keep you updated on that in every video. Okay, so I'll go and check if that wood dye is dry and then finish that mirror off, and I want to get that into place and then close this episode off. So I really hope you've enjoyed it, and I'll see you again in about 10 days to 2 weeks, so 10 to 14 days. Okay, let's have a look at that mirror. Okay, the varnish is now dry, so I'm ready to attach the mirror. And for the mirror, I'm using this self-adhesive mirrored vinyl. Now, this is actually something that Matt ordered in to repair a full-sized piece of furniture that we have with a mirrored front that actually cracked. So he bought a large roll, and it was quite expensive if I remember rightly. Now he thinks he got it from Amazon. Now I'm sure you can buy this sort of thing in smaller sheets, but what you want to search for is self-adhesive mirrored vinyl and not silver vinyl or chrome vinyl, because then you're not actually going to get that mirrored look, you're just going to get a coloured vinyl. And like I say, this is self-adhesive, so really easy to attach. So I'm going to begin by removing the back in there. And obviously I've already cut this to size. State the obvious. I'm not going to stick it all the way down. I just want to get a corner and then peel off the protective front. And then you'll see just how sort of bright this is. Like that. And that has a really lovely look to it. Really mirror-like, and I actually prefer this to the sort of mirrored plastic sheets that you can buy, just because they're so difficult to cut, and this you can just cut with scissors. Okay, but my mirror is now complete, and I saved a bit of the strip that I used around the mirror there, and I'm going to just glue this onto the back so that when I attach it to the wall, which I'll actually do with glue, it's going to sit forward slightly to look as though there is actually a picture hook behind there rather than being stuck flat to the wall. And there is the mirror in place. And I just used my smaller rule to get that in the correct position. So it's pretty much sitting central there from top to bottom and side to side. But yeah, I really like that. I really hope you've enjoyed today's tutorial. I think we'll probably do this again in the next episode, just do some bits and pieces in different rooms. And I'm going to start recording that as soon as I possibly can. Please don't forget to hit the like button and do comment below as well. Answer some of those questions that I asked earlier. I really do love hearing about why you love this hobby. And yeah, I really hope you've enjoyed today's tutorials. And I'll see you again soon, so take care. Bye!